Well, hi, thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. I binged season 1 on Monday and then watched all season 2 yesterday. I really liked it.
Wow.
Up to date.
Yeah, very good. So obviously this second season is a whole new story and everything, but everything is really still colored by everything that happened last season. So can you each sort of talk about how your characters are still being sort of affected by that and how it affects both your relationships with each other and your work? We'll just go Gemma, then Tahirah, then Jimmy.
Yeah, I feel like Sarah moves on to Homicide Command after season 1, and I think she's ready for a fresh start, and is very quickly met once again with misogyny and the hierarchy, and is given a cold case. So she's sort of back to square one in terms of like her baseline for the work that she's about to do in a different unit. But I think, I think she was deeply affected by the tower because that was something she hadn't typically seen, even though she's been in the police force for a long time. And so I think, it just sort of caused her to screw her courage even further and commit herself to her job even more, if it's possible, even more than she already was. So I don't think she's haunted by it, but I certainly think that, as you say, it colors her, part of the tapestry of her life is that the tower is looming in the background, and that happened, and certain things are referred to. And Lizzie's a stark reminder of that. Whenever she sees Lizzie, she sees, I think, some sort of failure and some sort of injustice, and she carries that, certainly. But I think she's also willing to give Lizzie a chance, and she's also deeply affected by the fact that her relationship with Steve broke down because of that. So there's huge elements of the past chasing her, but I think the fresh start she wanted isn't quite what she gets, because she finds Steve's already there.
Yeah. All right.
Lizzie's still making interesting choices.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. I think much the same. I think the tower itself physically is still there, and that's always a very stark reminder for Lizzie. And for Lizzie, I think it is quite haunting. She witnessed a really traumatic event in the first series, and there's not really that long of a time that has passed between the end of the first series and the beginning of this series. And so I think she's still mourning. She's still carrying that grief around, and I don't think that's ever going to change. But there's definitely, I think, something that is a lot harder about Lizzie this time, potentially. A bit kind of less green, maybe, because she's kind of been changed by this event forever, and I think that's what she takes into her work this time round. Although, albeit still making questionable decisions.
All right, Jimmy.
Yeah, and I feel for Steve, it's a similar version of what Gemma and Tahirah said, but I think for Steve also, the tower represents a really interesting point in his career that I feel like he was juggling the professional and the personal, his home life, like the kids, the divorce, and then also enjoying that, putting himself into the work and that relationship that he had with Sarah. And so I think that's looming over him, as well as the tower itself. And he pivoted, but I think there's also a sense of Steve of unfinished business, and frustration with that. And I think it's really nice that even though it's a new story, that we haven't let go of the roots of season 1. Hello.
Hi. All right. And then this is sort of, Gemma, sort of continuing on this, but you were talking about, she has this new position. She has more power now, but at the same time, she also sort of has to delegate to Lizzie, and now she has sort of a new partner too, and part of it with Elaine. So can you sort of talk about that, and also sort of her balancing, I guess, being able to control what she can't control, and sort of how that relates?
I think you're absolutely right. She's moved up, but she's still relatively inert in terms of like what cases she can choose to be part of, and she can't. I don't know, when she's told that she's got this cold case, I think obviously every part of her wants to scream like what the actual but she just knows that she's got to suck it up because that's the way it is, and the hierarchy is the hierarchy. And I think also that she feels that like she'll take on this cold case, and I think she's got a quiet confidence that like she's going to work this out, and she's going to come back and prove that she is more than capable of anything he thinks is going to throw her off. Like almost the sort of the colder and worse the case, the more determined she'd be to come back and say, look, right, I've solved it, what's next? So I feel like she's tremendously dedicated to speaking to the patriarchy, really, in a quiet way, just quietly proving herself day in, day out. And it's often Fedden often says of her, you don't give up, do you? You're unshakable. And I think she's quietly pleased that he recognizes that in her, and that she's tenacious and is here for the long term. So yeah.
And I was going to say, she also sort of has to rely on, like I said, Lizzie to do some of it this time. Can she like kind of let go of, I guess, those preconceived notions she has, though, to know that she can take care of herself?
What, in terms of that Lizzie can take care of herself?
Yes.
I think Sarah is still very curious to see if Lizzie can prove herself. I think she's very happy to let her try and prove herself, but pretty much straight off the bat, she's making questionable decisions, and perhaps Lizzie's mess has to be cleaned up again. And yet, she's a different kind of police officer from Sarah, and what she's doing is not wrong. It's just very different and edgier and fresher than perhaps Sarah's old school black and white moral code way of doing things, Now,
Tahirah, I wanted to sort of talk about, like I was just saying with her, but in your case, that you have more that you have to do, whether she's really ready for it or not, because she takes it on, whether she wants to or not. So can you sort of tease a bit about that and sort of how she deals with suddenly having all this rest upon her, I guess is the best way to put it.
I think Lizzie, very, like, in the same way as we met her in season 1, I think that's one thing that hasn't really changed about her character as much in season 2, is that she is still willing, I guess, whether it's, I don't know, an intelligent choice or not. I think she kind of removes the logic out of a lot of her decisions and goes with her emotions. And it's, I think at the forefront of that is always, I'm going to put myself or my own safety, I'm going to prioritize other people's safety in front of my own. And I think that's how she approaches a lot of situations, which then leads to her ending up in, quite dangerous situations at times, or potentially hampering, other cases. But I think, like Gemma said, the way in which she goes about her her role and her job and her police work is just very different to Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
And is, there is a naivety to it, but it's also, I think, coming from a really strong place of care. Like, that's why she became, in a very kind of idealistic way, that's why she became a police officer. It was to literally protect and serve her community.
Right, definitely. Now, Jimmy, your character obviously has a new job as well, but also is sort of offered, to move up maybe in a different direction. So can you tease a bit about that?
Yeah, I think, in the backdrop of season 1, Steve had already had a heavy stint of being undercover. I think Steve's relationship with his work is, I feel like there's a version of that's always been number one, which is reflected in his marriage, breaking up. And I suppose, so in terms of season 2, he's been dangled a carrot, and I think where we meet Steve in season 2, you can see he's trying to be the father to his kids and trying to be a decent husband and trying to find a bit of balance in terms of that work-life balance. But I don't know, Steve reminds me a bit of a boxer that can't retire, I think, it's really hard for him to say no to an opportunity in terms of what's being presented to him in season 2, but also it comes from a place of Steve's about the work, right? He really is. To be a black police officer for so long in the Met, and to have seen what he's seen, and to be still in that great position, you have to really want it. And I think that ties into the thing with how he fought for Lizzie, you know, and like, look, be a good cop, stay in it, like you're the future, you know what I mean? We need to change things within. And I think Steve definitely is going to find it hard to maybe turn down this latest offer.
All right. Gemma, your character meets somebody this season. So
yes,
a little bit, you can talk about that, whatever you're allowed to say about that.
Yeah, well, it's someone who has appeared briefly in season 1,
yeah.
sort of come into her life, and I think Sarah is sort of blindsided by her frankness and her honesty and her clarity of what she wants, and therefore Sarah's sort of brought along with it, and you know, something Sarah allows someone else into her life, which I think she struggles to do, based on the fact that, you know, we learn something more about Sarah, which is not a secret it's in the books, that she lost her sister in a car accident when she was 17, and so I think Sarah is possibly, you know, frightened to love or to trust. You know, there's all sorts of things wrapped up in that grief for her still, that she never, you know, we realize in season 2 she's never really dealt with that, and so to let someone new in is really risky for her. And so I think it's nice to explore that side of things. And yeah, I'm not sure it'll work out, but we'll see.
All right. Thank you, all of you. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks a lot. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.